She wasn't just sniffing packets, I whispered, a cold fury washing over me. She was running a low-budget, highly illegal surveillance state from her beige-carpeted command center. The Pentagon would have a collective aneurysm. This isn't just snooping, I breathed, staring at a log of Gary's search history that included therapists who take my insurance, followed by bulk order discount on Magenta Inc. This is a one-woman Stasi, powered by free Wi-Fi and an unholy desire to know whose dog is pooping on whose lawn. After years of making sure digital spies didn't read things they shouldn't, usually involving multi-billion-dollar secrets and the kind of encryption that would make your teeth ache, all I wanted was a lawn. A decent internet connection for my own cat videos, not the ones flagged by three-letter agencies. And neighbors who debated sprinkler times, not national security. I figured Pleasant Valley Homes, with its offensively cheerful sign featuring a cartoon sun wearing sunglasses, was a safe bet. My name's Alex Henderson, by the way, and if you'd told me a month ago I'd be waging a cyber war in a cul-de-sac, I'd have suggested you adjust your medication. Spoiler, Pleasant Valley wasn't a safe bet. I was still wrestling with a flat-pack bookshelf that seemed to have more in common with a sentient origami creature than actual furniture when I had my first encounter. Brenda McLaughlin, HOA president, clipboard practically fused to her hand, materialized on my doorstep. She had the kind of permed helmet hair that could deflect small arms fire, and eyes that could probably see through lead. "Mr. Henderson, is it?" Her voice was a finely tuned instrument of passive aggression, like a violin played with a cheese grater. "Welcome to Pleasant Valley. I'm Brenda McLaughlin, HOA president." She didn't offer a hand. I think she was worried I might leave fingerprints on her aura. "Just a friendly heads up, your mailbox appears to be, let's say, aspiring to greater heights than regulations permit. Section 7, paragraph 3, sub-bullet, AA of the Community Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions clearly states mailboxes must not exceed 42 inches from ground level to the base of the receptacle. My mailbox had aspirations. This was new. My last performance review involved words like mission critical and threat matrix, not vertical ambition of postal receptacles. I glanced at the offending mailbox. It looked like a mailbox. "It came with the house," I offered, a defense I instantly regretted. Brenda's left eyebrow, a perfectly plucked V for victory, or vendetta in her case, twitched. "Previous owner non-compliance is not a valid excuse for current non-compliance, Mr. Henderson. We pride ourselves on uniformity here. It's what keeps Pleasant Valley pleasant." She then rattled off a few more friendly heads-ups about the precise shade of beige permitted for garden hoses, Desert Mirage, not Dune Whisper, God forbid, and the approved decibel levels for wind chimes, basically silent. Before retreating, presumably to triangulate the position of an unauthorized dandelion, she proudly mentioned the new community Wi-Fi. "A wonderful initiative I spearheaded myself," she declared, puffing her chest out slightly. "For enhanced connectivity and, of course, community safety." That last part came with a knowing, almost predatory glint in her eye. Community Wi-Fi, administered by Brenda. The woman who probably thought firewall was a new type of decorative garden border you bought at Home Depot. My Pentagon-trained spidey senses weren't just tingling, they were screaming, setting off klaxons, and probably alerting NORAD. I made a non-committal grunt and politely declined to connect my main devices when I later found the network listed, citing old-fashioned security habits. Brenda had looked at me like I'd just confessed to being a Luddite who churned his own butter. A week later, at a very stiff and overly supervised block gathering, Brenda was there with her clipboard, naturally, looking like she was conducting a strategic reconnaissance mission. The whispers started. Mrs. Periwinkle, a sweet old lady whose prize-winning petunias were her entire world, cornered me by the rapidly congealing 7-layer dip. "It was the strangest thing, Alex," she confided, her voice a conspiratorial quaver. "I was on the phone with my sister Martha, you know, the one in Poughkeepsie. Inside my house, mind you, with the windows closed, talking about how my prize-winning petunias were looking a bit peaky this season. And the very next day, Brenda slips a pamphlet on advanced petunia care in arid conditions under my door with a little handwritten note saying, 'Heard these might help, dear.' Mrs. Periwinkle clutched her plastic cup of lemonade so hard her knuckles were white. How could she have heard? Gary, a perpetually stressed-looking guy who worked from home as a freelance graphic designer and lived 2 doors down, chimed in. "Tell me about it. I was complaining to my wife last Tuesday, in our kitchen, that my client was demanding a logo that looked more fuchsia, less magenta. The next morning, Brenda stops me while I'm getting the mail and says, 'Gary, dear, I've always found that a touch more blue really brings out the depth in fuchsia. Just a thought.'" He shuddered. It was uncanny. The evidence was anecdotal, but the pattern was alarming. Brenda always seemed to know things she shouldn't. Trivial things mostly, but the knowing was the unnerving part. Curiosity and a lifetime of professional paranoia got the better of me. I had an old burner laptop I used for things I didn't want tracked. I connected it to Pleasant Valley Connect Secure, the irony was physically painful, and started poking around. Almost immediately, I noticed amateurish network probes, pings, clumsy port scans, the kind of thing you see from a script kiddie who's just discovered Kali Linux through a YouTube tutorial titled H4CK, the 3PL 4 and 3T in 10 mins. "Cute," I muttered to myself, setting up a simple honeypot on the burner. Someone's been watching those tutorials. Probably Brenda's nephew, Bartholomew, earning his allowance by securing the network. Bartholomew, I imagined, was a pasty 13-year-old who thought DOS attacks were a brand of energy drink. Then came Brenda's omniscient emails from the official HOA account. They became increasingly specific, targeting minor infractions with an accuracy that would make a sniper jealous. "A gentle reminder," one chirped, "that inflatable lawn decorations, as per Addendum D, subsection 3, are only permitted for display between December 1st and December 26th inclusive. Some residents seem to have forgotten their delightful, albeit unseasonable, Easter bunny is overstaying its welcome." I froze. The day before, I'd been testing a new, highly isolated network segment in my home lab. For about 10 minutes, purely as a visual test for a camera I was calibrating, I'd inflated a ridiculous 6-foot pink flamingo. It wasn't even visible from the street. My lab was in the basement. "Okay," I said to my empty office. "That flamingo was on a network segment so isolated it thought it was on Mars. She's not just guessing. She's not just lucky." The tipping point came a few days later. I'd developed a craving for a very specific, overly complicated coffee from a place called The Daily Grind, which was a good 20-minute drive away. As I was strolling back, oversized cup in hand, savoring the sugar rush and the brief illusion of freedom, Brenda ambushed me near the community rose garden, which she pruned with terrifying precision. "Mr. Henderson," she trilled, her eyes locking onto my coffee cup like a heat-seeking missile. "Enjoying your usual double-shot caramel swirl, extra whip latte with a dusting of cinnamon this morning?" I stopped dead. The cup nearly slipped from my grasp. "That's remarkably specific, Brenda," I managed, my voice a little tighter than I intended. "I get that at The Daily Grind, 5 towns over. How would you—" Brenda bestowed upon me a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "A good HOA president keeps her finger on the pulse of the community, Mr. Henderson, and some of us have very good hearing." She tapped the side of her perfectly coiffed head. That was it. The good hearing comment, combined with the coffee, the flamingo, Mrs. Periwinkle's petunias. It wasn't just network sniffing. This was something more. My blood, which had been slowly simmering with suburban frustration, began to boil with righteous ex-Pentagon indignation. That evening, the flat-pack bookshelf remained a monument to my domestic failures, but my digital toolkit was wide open. It was time for some serious digital spelunking. I used my own heavily fortified home network, routing my connection through so many anonymizing hops that it probably looked like I was accessing Pleasant Valley's network from a research station in Antarctica. The security on the community Wi-Fi was, to put it mildly, a dumpster fire. The admin password for the main commercial-grade router Brenda had somehow convinced the HOA to purchase was Brenda Rules HOA. I kid you not. The firmware was years out of date, riddled with more holes than a block of Swiss cheese left out for target practice. And then I found it. The community provided routers, the ones installed in many of an unsuspecting residents' homes for improved signal strength, weren't just routers. They were a cheap brand, notorious for a backdoor feature that allowed remote microphone activation. A feature that was, on every single one I could access, currently active and streaming audio to a cloud storage account. Brenda's cloud storage account. She wasn't just sniffing packets, I whispered, a cold fury washing over me. She was running a low-budget, highly illegal surveillance state from her beige-carpeted command center. The Pentagon would have a collective aneurysm. Digging deeper, I found the poorly secured cloud storage. It was a goldmine of digital voyeurism, snippets of conversations, arguments about whose turn it was to do the dishes, hushed discussions about medical ailments, kids bickering over video games, browse histories, painting pathetic little pictures of quiet desperation and online shopping addictions. And most disturbingly, occasional blurry webcam captures from compromised devices, usually triggered by voice commands the residents didn't even know their routers were listening for. All meticulously, if incompetently, filed by Brenda, presumably as evidence of potential HOA violations, or more likely, just to satisfy her insatiable appetite for gossip. This isn't just snooping, I breathed, staring at a log of Gary's search history that included therapists who take my insurance, followed by bulk order discount on Magenta Inc. This is a one-woman Stasi powered by free Wi-Fi and an unholy desire to know whose dog is pooping on whose lawn. A slow, dangerous smile spread across my face. Game on, Brenda, game on. My first step was to gather intel and, potentially, a few disgruntled allies. I subtly chatted with Gary during a chance encounter while we were both putting out our recycling bins, his meticulously sorted, mine less so. So, Gary, I began, casual-like, ever get the feeling that community Wi-Fi is a bit chatty? Gary's eyes widened. Chatty? Alex, I swear that thing knows what I'm thinking before I do. Last week I muttered to myself that I needed new running shoes, and an hour later I get 3 targeted ads for Nikes on my phone. Connected to the community Wi-Fi, of course. Interesting, I said, nodding sagely. Maria, the young mom from down the street, was next. I caught her at the playground, looking harried as her twin toddlers attempted to eat sand. Maria, I said, offering a spare baby wipe. Brenda ever give you any oddly specific parenting advice? She snorted. Only every day. Yesterday she told me Timmy and Tommy needed more structured outdoor play, right after I'd spent an hour trying to convince them that the living room couch wasn't a trampoline. How did she know? It's like she has spies everywhere. Even old Mr. Henderson, no relation, thankfully, though Brenda often got us confused, leading to some truly bizarre lectures directed at me about his unharmonious wind chimes, was on board. That woman, he'd grumbled when I asked if he trusted the HOA's tech, wouldn't know a gigabyte if it bit her on her overly pampered posterior, but she knows everything. It ain't natural. They didn't need to know the full extent of my plan, not yet. But it was good to know I wasn't the only one who felt Pleasant Valley was turning into a low-rent panopticon. Next, I meticulously documented Brenda's entire setup. IP addresses, the specific and laughably outdated version of the parental control software she was misusing as a spy tool. NetNanny 9000, if you can believe it. Her cloud storage credentials, also shockingly weak. Brenda's Secrets 123. Everything. I was building an airtight case, not just for a bit of vengeful fun, but for a proper, legal takedown. She's using NetNanny 9000 to be neighborhood nosy 24/7, I noted in my encrypted file. This is going to be beautiful. Then came Operation Fortify Henderson. I couldn't very well wage a cyber war from an undefended position. I decided to upgrade my home network for better streaming performance. I called in a local company, Dave's Data and Cabling. Poor Dave. He had no idea what he was in for. "So, Mr. Henderson," Dave said, scratching his head as he looked at my scribbled diagram. He was a burly guy with a tool belt that had seen better decades. "You want shielded Cat 8 cabling run through the walls, not just for the office, but also the guest bathroom? A dedicated, uninterruptible power supply for just the router and modem? And you want the main access point housed in, what did you call it? A custom-built, signal-dampening Faraday cage-style enclosure?" I nodded solemnly. "Exactly, for optimal TikTok viewing. My cat, Mittens, is very particular about buffering, and she likes to watch in the guest bathroom. Don't ask." Dave exchanged a bewildered look with his younger, equally confused apprentice, Kyle. "Sir," Kyle ventured, "standard Cat 6 is usually fine for like 4K movies. And cats." "Mittens," I said with a gravity that brooked no argument, "is not a standard cat." Later, I overheard Dave muttering to Kyle, "This guy's either building a doomsday bunker for a nuclear war, or he has the world's most demanding tech-savvy feline. Either way, the pay's good." They did the work, albeit with much grumbling about the overkill. My house was now a digital fortress. Mittens, oblivious, purred on my lap as I plotted. With my defenses secure, it was time for Operation Feed the Beast. Absurd data. My burner laptop, still dutifully connected to Pleasant Valley Connect Secure, became my primary weapon of misinformation. I started feeding carefully crafted, utterly bizarre data through it, knowing Brenda's beady little digital eyes were watching. My search queries became a masterclass in the absurd. Can raccoons be trained as sommeliers? Legal ramifications of teaching squirrels to commit tax fraud, asking for a friend. Best tinfoil hat designs for blocking 5G and HOA presidents. DIY instructions for miniature trebuchet for squirrel nut delivery, of course. My accidentally streamed audio, picked up by the router's ever-listening ear, was equally eclectic. One day it was obscure Klingon opera at full volume. The next, a detailed lecture on the mating habits of the Patagonian toothfish. Sometimes I'd let it play self-help tapes I'd downloaded from some long-forgotten corner of the internet. Embracing Your Inner Traffic Cone, a guide to standing firm. I even crafted fake email drafts, knowing her keylogging software would pick them up. To the esteemed Council of Garden Gnomes, upcoming synchronized lawn flamingo ballet tryouts. Please find attached the choreography notes for The Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies, slightly off-key remix. Brenda, predictably, began to unravel. Her HOA meeting pronouncements, already legendary for their pettiness, took a sharp turn into the bizarre. "Furthermore," she declared at one meeting, her eyes wide and slightly twitchy, a vein throbbing at her temple, "I have received credible intelligence, very credible, suggesting that some residents are attempting to establish diplomatic relations with subterranean mole people. This is a clear violation of Section 9 of the CC&Rs, unsanctioned interspecies alliances and/or subterranean treaties." A wave of confused murmurs rippled through the room. Mrs. Periwinkle looked faint. Gary choked on his lukewarm coffee. I sipped my water, maintaining an expression of mild, scholarly interest. Brenda, I noticed, was now furtively taking notes whenever she saw me, probably convinced my squirrel nut delivery trebuchet was phase 1 of the mole people invasion. Frustrated and confused by the increasingly weird data, Brenda decided her current methods weren't enough. Like a gambler convinced the next hand will be the jackpot, she doubled down. I detected new, even more intrusive software being clumsily installed on the network. A newer version of NetNanny, perhaps, or something even more insidious. She even had her hapless nephew, Bartholomew, I was right about him, install a physically obvious new antenna on her roof, pointed with suspicious accuracy towards my house. "She's like a digital Icarus," I mused, watching the new antenna sway slightly in the breeze. "Flying too close to the sun on wings made of pirated software and paranoia. And I grinned, "am about to provide the ocean." Her escalation was sloppy. It was my opportunity. The first interaction with the local constabulary was almost an afterthought, a side effect of Brenda's growing paranoia. Based on my research into high-yield, rapid-growth fertilizer for award-winning roses, which of course her spyware flagged as suspicious, Brenda called the non-emergency police line to report potential bomb-making activity at my address. Soon, a bored-looking Officer Miller was at my door. "Mr. Henderson?" he drawled, thumbing through a small notepad. "We had a call. Something about unusual horticultural enthusiasm, and possibly the construction of a small, unregistered siege weapon?" I feigned bewildered innocence. "Officer, my petunias are my passion. I'm aiming for the county fair blue ribbon this year. And the catapult?" I winked. "Purely for bird feeding. Aerodynamic seed dispersal, highly efficient. Gets the seeds right over the HOA president's fence. Kidding, mostly." Officer Miller did not look amused by my attempt at levity, but made a note. "Right, fertilizer and catapults. Just keep the projectiles on your own property, sir." He left, clearly chalking Brenda up as a local eccentric with too much time on her hands. But a report was filed. A seed of Brenda's erratic behavior was planted with law enforcement. I gave him a polite, neighborly concerned smile as he walked away. Phase 1 of the public awareness campaign was complete. Now for the main event. The Pleasant Valley Annual Community Picnic and HOA General Meeting was Brenda's Super Bowl. It was her time to shine, to pontificate, to unveil new and excitingly restrictive regulations. It was, in short, the perfect venue for Operation Public Humiliation. I needed bait, irresistible bait, something that would prey on Brenda's deepest fears and her unquenchable nosiness. I drafted a fake internal HOA memo, designed to look like it was accidentally leaked from the county planning office. The subject? Proposed site selection. Pleasant Valley adjacency for new regional waste recycling and experimental manure processing facility. I made sure to include a fictional map, pinpointing the proposed facility on a plot of undeveloped land Brenda had been lobbying to get rezoned for a community serenity garden, which everyone knew was just code for Brenda's private Zen retreat. If there's one thing that trumps Brenda's love of spying, I chuckled to myself, uploading the booby-trapped PDF to a burner cloud account, made to look like Gary's slightly less secure personal storage. It's her NIMBYism, She won't be able to resist a peek at the top-secret manure memo. The day of the picnic, I volunteered to help with the AV setup for Brenda's traditional slideshow, usually a thrilling montage of well-manicured lawns and stern warnings about unapproved garbage can placement. This gave me unrestricted access to the community center's projector and sound system. While everyone else was wrestling with folding tables and arguing over who brought the potato salad with raisins in it, a perennial source of controversy, I discreetly installed my own small, powerful mini-computer about the size of a deck of cards, and a secure remote access point hidden behind a wilting ficus. Gary and Maria helped me run some cables, blissfully unaware they were aiding and abetting a digital coup d'etat. Their job was simple. If they saw Brenda looking flustered by my presentation, Gary was to discreetly call 911 and report evidence of significant and ongoing illegal wiretapping and computer fraud being presented live at the HOA meeting. Maria was to start filming on her phone for posterity. The picnic was in full sweltering swing. Kids were sticky with ice cream, adults were making forced small talk, and Brenda, in a terrifyingly floral pantsuit, was holding court by the lukewarm lemonade. Finally, after the hot dog eating contest, won by a surprisingly competitive Mrs. Periwinkle, and a truly dire karaoke performance of My Way by Brenda's long-suffering husband Harold, it was time for the main event, Brenda's State of the Shrubbery address. She took the microphone, beaming with the self-importance of a minor deity addressing her particularly well-behaved flock. I, meanwhile, was hunched over my phone, disguised as if I were engrossed in a very important game of Candy Crush. In reality, I was monitoring network traffic. As Brenda launched into a preamble about the moral imperative of correctly sorted recyclables, I saw it. Brenda's IP address, originating from her tablet right there on the podium, frantically trying to access and download the manure plant memo from the bait folder. A slow, predatory grin spread across my face. "Gotcha, you magnificent busybody!" Just as Brenda was clearing her throat to announce, I presumed, a new regulation regarding the emotional well-being of garden gnomes, I remotely triggered my program. The projector screen behind her, which had been displaying a terrifyingly close-up photo of a perfectly edged lawn, flickered. Then, instead of Agenda Item 3, Discussion on Excessive Wind Chime Sonority, Post-Sunset, a new title blazed across the screen in large, friendly letters. Pleasant Valley Wi-Fi, What Brenda Really Knows, and How She Knows It. A hush fell over the crowd. Brenda, mid-sentence, faltered. Then the show began. With cartoony sound effects, a Boeing for every mouse click, a cuckoo for every absurd search term, my presentation unfolded. First, a simplified map of the neighborhood, with little digital arrows showing data streams from various houses all funneling directly to a blinking red dot labeled Brenda's Bunker. Next, anonymized but clearly identifiable screenshots of her spy software dashboard, NetNanny 9000, Neighborhood Watchdog Edition, showing active connections. Then came the highlights reel of the absurd fake data I'd fed her. Resident researching a llama law. Query, can garden gnomes unionize? Audio stream detected, Klingon love poetry. This was met with a few confused giggles. The giggles turned into gasps and outright laughter as the next slides showed Brenda's increasingly unhinged HOA directives, clearly based on that fake data. Her email about subterranean mole people got a particularly big reaction. Brenda was visibly paling, her floral pantsuit seeming to wilt under the sudden heat of 100 bewildered stares. And then the coup de grace. My program switched to a live capture, or at least a screenshot time-stamped just moments before, of Brenda's tablet screen. Prominently displayed was the top-secret manure memo, halfway downloaded My voice, initially disguised by a modulator to sound like a generic game show host, boomed over the PA system, which I'd also conveniently hijacked. "Good evening, Pleasant Valley. It seems our community Wi-Fi has a few undocumented features. For instance, did you know Brenda has a keen interest in Mrs. Periwinkle's online bingo scores, or Mr. Abernathy's secret passion for competitive speed knitting, judging by his Amazon order history?" I let the modulator drop, and my own calm, slightly amused voice filled the sudden, shocked silence. And tonight, a special live feature, folks. Direct from Brenda's tablet, exclusive access to the highly confidential manure plant memo. She just couldn't resist, could you, Brenda? Brenda, if possible, turned an even more fascinating shade of puce, a color usually reserved for pickled beets. She stammered into the microphone. This is an outrage, slander, technical difficulties. This is Russian hackers. Yes, definitely Russian hackers." The crowd erupted. Not in anger, not at first. It was a wave of stunned, disbelieving laughter, then outrage, then more laughter as the sheer audacity of it all sank in. Harold, Brenda's husband, looked like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. He was slowly edging away from the podium. Right on cue, I saw Gary discreetly on his phone. A few minutes later, the flashing blue and red lights of a patrol car cut through the twilight. Officer Miller, looking significantly less bored this time, strode into the community center, his partner, a stern-looking woman named Officer Diaz, beside him. "Well, well, Mrs. McLaughlin," Officer Miller said, his voice carrying easily in the now silent room. He surveyed the chaos, the damning projector screen, Brenda's apoplectic face, the astonished crowd. "This is a bit more than unusual horticultural enthusiasm or runaway catapults, isn't it?" I stepped forward, holding up a small, encrypted USB drive. "Officers," I said politely. "Alex Henderson. Perhaps this will help. It's all documented, with logs, timestamps, and surprisingly insecure cloud backups. Turns out, Brenda's Secrets 123 isn't as robust a password as one might think." Officer Diaz took the drive with a curt nod. "Mrs. McLaughlin," she said, her voice firm, "we're going to need you to come with us to answer a few questions regarding unauthorized computer access, illegal surveillance, and a few other potential felonies." Brenda was escorted away, still sputtering about Russian hackers and the decline of neighborhood decency. The HOA members were in an uproar. An emergency vote was practically held on the spot, by acclamation. Brenda was impeached, uninstalled, and digitally excommunicated in absentia. The mood in the community center shifted from shocked disbelief to a kind of giddy, anarchic liberation. Someone started playing Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead on their phone. It was, I had to admit, a little on the nose, but effective. Naturally, I became the reluctant neighborhood hero, the Snowden of suburbia. "You gotta fix the Wi-Fi, Alex," Gary pleaded. "You're the only one who knows how this stuff works." "So much for a quiet life," I muttered to Mittens later that night, as she kneaded my lap. "Now I'm the neighborhood IT guy." I helped them set up a genuinely secure, simple, community-managed network. I even taught Gary and a few other willing residents the basics of network maintenance. The new password was something mundane and easily remembered. Pleasant Valley Rocks. No more spying, no more backdoors. Just internet. Weeks later, Pleasant Valley was, for the first time since I'd moved in, genuinely pleasant. The new HOA president was a reasonable retired librarian named Doris, whose main concerns were ensuring the community garden actually grew vegetables and that the book club had enough copies of the monthly selection. I was on my porch, finally enjoying my ridiculously named coffee in peace. Mittens was sunning herself on the railing. Mrs. Periwinkle's petunias were thriving, apparently benefiting from a distinct lack of panicked over-fertilization. Mr. Henderson's wind chimes, the original, unharmonious ones, were chiming merrily, if a bit loudly, in the gentle breeze. And my mailbox? It was still 0.3 degrees off-axis. Some battles, I figured, just weren't worth fighting. The squirrels, by the way, never did learn to file taxes. But Brenda McLaughlin, I heard through the grapevine, was now facing some very serious charges and had developed a sudden intense aversion to anything with a Wi-Fi signal. Lesson learned, I hoped. The hard way.